Good evening. Welcome to the 2026 election hustings for St Helier Central. I'm Cathy Keir and I'm taking us through the proceedings this evening, and we've got until 9 o'clock, so I hope you've all got plenty of questions for the candidates. Before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Please make sure your phones are on airplane mode because messages do sometimes interfere with the tech. We're not expecting a fire alarm this evening, so if you hear one, please follow the exit signs, and there are plenty of them if you look around the room. The event's being live streamed to YouTube, so for those of us who are joining online, welcome. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to access some subtitles. A recording will then be on YouTube for anybody who couldn't make it tonight, so do let friends, family, if they couldn't make it, know that they can watch it online. So you can vote for up to 4 of tonight's 8 candidates, and they are, in alphabetical order, starting at this end: Karina Alves, Reform Jersey; Lee Carpenter, Reform Jersey; Catherine Curtis, Reform Jersey; Claire Deton, Independent; Lindsay Feltham, Reform Jersey; Cameron Monroe, Independent; John Tokalos, Independent; and Robin Ward, Independent. The candidates have decided that they'll each make an opening speech lasting up to 3 minutes, and they'll speak in alphabetical order. They've then allocated 90 seconds to answer each of your questions, and they'd like to answer one at a time. So when you do put your hand up and ask a question, please just ask one question. And then they'll take it in turns to be the first to answer the questions. So let's get going and kick off with the speeches. First, Karina Alves.
Hello, is that okay? Okay. Hello, I'm Karina Alves, and I want to start by saying what a real honour and privilege it has been representing you in the Assembly over the previous 2 terms. A lot has happened over the last 8 years, from Brexit to COVID to the various global events happening currently across the world. Throughout this time, I've worked hard to ensure your voice is heard and represented in the Assembly and government, always remaining approachable and responsive to your needs. In the Assembly, I have worked on the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, where we undertook a full comprehensive review of the mental health and maternity services, and I've been Vice Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee, which is responsible for the procedures of the State's Assembly, elections, members' facilities, and members' codes of conduct. I've also led on projects to increase political awareness, education and engagement for young people and our community more widely. And I was able to enshrine into our law a dedicated political awareness and education subcommittee, which will hopefully secure the future of this work for generations to come. In government, I have supported the Education and Housing Ministers as Assistant Minister, and I held the role of Assistant Chief Minister with responsibility for the control of housing and work law. In this, I worked closely with local businesses to help relax some controls and expand the list of licensed roles to include education support staff, nursery workers, and some extra healthcare roles. This has encouraged staff retention and well-being, ensuring that our island continues to support our economy and community. Some of my other achievements this term have included free GP visits for under 18s and those in full-time education, extending the young person's bus pass to full-time students and apprentices, gaining approval for whistleblowing legislation, protection for employees who speak out, simplifying the control of housing and work law and regulations, publishing guidance and policy for the first time to improve and increase transparency, and securing the International Cultural Centre Advocacy Service, offering free confidential support and guidance for those living and arriving in Jersey trying to navigate our government systems. Prior to being elected, I was a maths secondary teacher and a part-time medical secretary and translator for a local GP surgery. I have seen firsthand the need for a joined-up approach across health, education, the economy, our natural and built-up environment, and the difference it has on our well-being as individuals and as an island. I will continue working hard, remaining approachable and delivering long-term tangible solutions and pushing for a joined-up approach that balances community needs and responsible spending, transparency and accountability. Without you, I would not be here today, so thank you, and please vote for me and the rest of my Reform Jersey team. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Lee Carpenter.
Thank you all very much for coming this evening. My name is Lee Carpenter, and I'm standing for election because, as an island, we are failing. We are failing to address poverty. We are failing to convince our young people they can build their futures here. We are failing to help people own their own home by making them affordable. We are failing to provide sufficient affordable childcare. And we are failing to take proper care of our pensioners. I have lived in Jersey now for 30 years, having moved here as a child, and during that time, things have only become steadily and progressively worse. Nowhere in Ireland are these issues more prevalent than here in the heart of St Helier. Of my 30 years of living in Jersey, I've spent 29 of them here in town. Jersey is my home, St Helier is my home, and I simply cannot stand by and do nothing as Jersey drifts further and further off course. I cannot stand by and do nothing knowing that 10% of Irelanders are forced to go without essentials like food or heating. I cannot stand by and do nothing knowing that 82% of lower income private rental households are living in rental stress. And I cannot stand by and do nothing knowing that food bank use has doubled since 2022, or that 25% of our kids now live in relative poverty, a number that jumps to 54% for single parent households. The status quo is unacceptable, unsustainable, and we need to turn the tide. Affordable housing is key to so many of the issues that we face. Over the past 2 decades, house prices in Jersey have risen by 140%. Rents have risen by 128%. Real-time earnings have seen little change since 1990. We need to give young people hope that they can raise families here and build secure futures. We must do far more to help those who have gone to university in the UK return to the island. We need to recognise that for many, years of paying sky-high rents has left saving for a deposit incredibly challenging, often paying more than what their mortgage repayments would otherwise have been. And we must urgently tackle unaffordable childcare and look to remove GST from food and essential items. We find ourselves in this position due to political decisions made in the States Assembly over many years, but things do not have to be this way. Over the last 12 years, Reform Jersey has consistently demonstrated a firm commitment to fighting for a fairer society. During the last term, Reform Jersey abolished GP fees for kids and students, raised the minimum wage, introduced a residential tenancy law that provides essential protections for tenants, expanded free childcare for 2 to 3 year olds, expanded Pension Plus, allowing more pensioners access to cheaper dentist and optician appointments, extended free school meals, and made bus travel cheaper for full-time students and apprentices. Reform Jersey achieved these with 10 members in the Assembly, but with more of us elected, we can achieve so much more. On June the 7th, please vote for your Reform Jersey candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out on this grey evening. Firstly, I'll just provide some information about myself, and then I'll move on to more interesting matters. I've held weekly constituency meetings for the past 4 years at the Town Hall and have assisted parishioners with all sorts of problems. I chaired the Children Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, have been Vice Chair of the Parish Review Panel and the Assisted Dying Panel. I've led the Online Harms Review, the Lifelong Learning Review, and many others. I brought the successful propositions to bring in a lifetime driving ban for those drivers who kill or seriously injure someone on the roads, and to develop legislation that will curtail the illegal lift service. I got the reuse centre up and running again. I've tried to get more revenue for our public services by doing away with tax relief on landlord mortgages that would have brought in over £2 million per year. I've held meetings to look into the establishment of a Bank of Jersey, which could run on similar lines as the Bank of Gibraltar, which is currently making profits of £8 million per year. These are some of the things I've done and what I'll follow up on. So what are the particular issues in St Helier Central? Well, I know that when I've taken part in discussions to do with neighbourhood improvement areas, that people want more trees, less speed and less noise on the roads. We've had the improvements in Pomona Road, Poona Road and currently ongoing in Clairview Street. I'd like to see these improvements occurring in more areas and more quickly. As for noise in town, I've raised this matter before at the Deputies meetings at the Town Hall. I've done some research on ANPR cameras with microphones, currently being trialled in the UK, and I'm hoping that with the new constable in place, we will get some progress on that, as well as finding out whether the speed camera can be deployed in town areas. Housing and cost of living are also big areas of concern in our district, and these two issues are inextricably linked. Working families are running out of money before the end of the month because of huge rents as explained by the chair of Caritas. Thankfully, we've now got the residential tenancy law coming into operation, which will prevent rents from going up higher than inflation. But the damage is already done. Decades of government favouring property as an investment opportunity above prioritising it as homes has priced ordinary home buyers out of the market. If you want young people to stay in the island, please be careful how you use your vote, because decades of inaction over housing costs has led us to where we are now. And we have only just started to try and put this right. Please vote for me, Catherine Curtis, and for my Reform Jersey colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Claire Dutton.
Hi everyone. I'm going to tell you 3 things: who I am, what I can do, and my focus for St Helier Central. So, who am I? Claire Dutton, law professor, but more than anything else, I'm a passionate advocate for Jersey in everything I do, to the point where I bore people that I've only just met. I'm also a senior legal academic who's run higher education in the UK and Jersey. I judge disputes. I advise governments all over the world on fixing broken laws and creating laws and policies that actually work. I'm a trade union leader who represents people and makes sure they're heard. I'm a charity leader in Jersey and worldwide, fighting for, amongst other things, disability rights, inclusion, and better quality of life for all. I've helped many individuals and organisations in Jersey and elsewhere for free, but I need to go into the States Assembly to be able to help more people. What I can do. Some of our laws and policies just aren't working, and even changes which have already been agreed or approved are taking much too long. That makes life more expensive, it wastes money, and it hurts the economy. It hurts people too. If elected, I'll push for improvements to how we actually make law and policy, so that we do it right the first time, with an evidence base for every important policy, decision, or law reform. I'll push for full costing and stakeholder impact statements for policies and law proposals. In other words, I'll push very hard to make sure that we know before we make a policy or law who it's going to impact, what it will cost them, and what they will have to do because of it. I'll push for a better deal for charities and more support for people at key life stages. When I push, I normally win. My focus for St Helier Central is on improving quality of life and ensuring that all communities here are heard and supported. We need other parishes to understand what it's like to live and work in the middle of town. We need them to understand what the pressures are here for people at all stages of life and for businesses. I'm asking you to vote me in to help our community while there's still time to make meaningful change and prevent further decline. I create solutions, not problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Lindsay Feltham.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay Feltham. I live here in St Helier Central, and it's been a real privilege to represent this community over the last 4 years. When I first stood for election, it was because I believed politics should start with people's real lives, the cost of food, rent, healthcare, conditions at work, quality of life, and whether people feel listened to. That is still what motivates me. Over the last 4 years, I have been a present, practical, and effective representative. I have listened to residents, taken up individual issues, raised concerns for our community, and used my position to deliver action. As Minister for Social Security, I have delivered practical improvements that put more money into people's pockets and make support easier to access. I increased the minimum wage, expanded support for pensioners, improved help for families, provided better support for people with a terminal diagnosis and their carers, and started modernising parts of our social security system. Those improvements did not happen by accident. They happened because I know how to work through the detail, get decisions made, and turn values into action. But Too many people are still struggling, and too many systems still feel harder than they need to be. That is why St Helier Central needs strong representation, not just warm words, not just criticism from the sidelines, but representatives like me who will do the work, understand the issues and see things through. For St Helier Central, I will keep pushing on housing, road safety, better public spaces, accessibility and support for people under pressure. That means standing up for homes people can actually afford. It means making town more welcoming and easier to get around, especially for older people, disabled people and families. It means creating new parks at Springfield School and the Labar Centre sites, strengthening childcare and education provision and bringing places like St Helier House back into use for the benefit of our community. At this election, people have a choice. Reform Jersey is standing for a Jersey where work pays, homes are genuinely affordable, public services are protected, and government is open, accountable, and focused on people's needs. Others may offer more of the same or tell people what they want to hear. I am standing on a record of delivery and on a manifesto that is clear about whose side we are on. I will not make promises that I cannot keep, but I will keep being honest, determined, and focused on making progress. So please vote for me and my Reform Jersey colleagues so we can turn the tide for a fairer Jersey, where people are listened to, supported, and able to build a good life. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Cameron Monroe.
I knew the mic would make its way down here eventually. So, I'm Cameron Monroe. I'm a cybersecurity analyst with a master's degree in the field.
Put your
And
mic
I've
a bit
also
closer.
Second?
Put your mic a bit closer. There.
How's that? Oh,
That's much better. There are people online who need to hear you too.
my apologies. I'm a cybersecurity analyst with a master's degree in the field, and I've also worked in a taxi office and as a delivery driver. I think the biggest issue affecting Jersey right now is the cost of living. And I really do think the best way to deal with that in an immediate, practical way is to bring over cheaper retailers like Aldi and like Lidl. They want to be here, they have asked to be here, they are afraid of the planning process, and they're afraid of finding the right site. Both of these are things that government can fix. They are solvable problems, and I think the next assembly needs to put more of a focus on making it happen to put some cash back in everyone's pockets. I'm also interested in taking a look at government waste. Jersey is spending emergency funding on day-to-day operations, and it cannot keep doing this indefinitely. We're staring down the barrel of an oil shock and possibly a brewing worldwide financial crisis, along with AI's impacts on jobs and any number of other turbulent things around the world that could cause us disruption. We cannot keep spending like there's no tomorrow. I think, sorry, I'm speaking without a script, so pardon me if I flub my words. Sorry, my brain's completely short-circuited. Take this one. Sorry, taking myself out.
Okay, thank you, Cameron. Next is John Tokolos.
Hi, I'm John Tokolos. I'm Jersey born, Greek parents. I've been in the catering business for almost 40 years, so I do know what it's like for businesses and local retails, what they're going through. One of the things that is something that is so close to me is that mental health. I want to do whatever I can to help with the mental health area because mental health deserves a priority as physical health. It's also the funding as well for the areas in that. Also with accessibilities around the island, as making it more easier for people with disabilities to get around, even at the workplace as well. The other thing is, I feel that with parking around the town and also with access around the area, I feel that it's very difficult for people to find access to get into town, do their shopping, and especially with the disabled parking as well. I feel that there should be more areas, especially with disabled areas, people who live in St Helier. There's not enough disabled parking in the areas where they live. That is something that I would like to work on and speak to, if I can be able to find a way for that. With sports, and sport is very important as well, because it's also for your mental health as well. It's good for the mental health. Funding for that area will be a good thing, so it will make it easier for people to go and do things, for sports activities. Also, that's it really. I mean, I can't think. I'm a little bit nervous myself at the moment, so it's pretty hard to actually come out and speak as much. Anyway, and I feel a little bit proud of myself because I have dyslexia, so getting all this paper in front of me is daunting, but I got through it. So, yeah, and I want to do everything I can to help people. I've lived here all my life, so this is my home. I love Jersey, although I'm Greek, but I do love Jersey. Yeah, and I just want to say thank you very much for this evening, for coming and seeing everybody, and hope to see you on June 7th as well, and hopefully I'll get some votes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Now we move on to Robin Ward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming this evening. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Robin Ward, and I'm standing as an independent candidate for the Deputy of St Helier Central. I've lived in this district for more than 60 years. This is not just where I live, it is my home, my community, and my life. I'm not a career politician. I'm a parishioner, a businessman, a neighbour, and above all, one of you. I walk these streets every day. I speak to people in the shops, in the cafes, in the parish, and outside their homes. And because of that, I understand the real pressures people are facing. For the last 47 years, I've run my own business here in Jersey, in this district, in fact. Business teaches you something very important. You cannot spend money you do not have. And when problems arise, you deal with them practically, honestly, and with common sense. That is what Jersey is missing today. We hear constantly about strategies, reviews, consultations, and promises. But what do islands actually see? Islanders unable to afford to live in their own island, families struggling with the cost of living, people relying on food banks in one of the wealthiest places in the world, an elderly population increasingly worried about how they will cope, a hospital still not built, and a government overspending running into enormous deficits. If this is considered success, then islanders have every right to ask, what would failure look like? The truth is this: government has lost focus. Too much politics today is driven by personalities, agendas, and headline-grabbing promises, instead of long-term thinking and practical delivery. That must change. That means reviewing spending honestly and cutting what we cannot afford. But this is not just about cutting costs, it's about rebuilding confidence in our island. We must support the people who create jobs, wealth, and opportunity. That means backing local businesses instead of burying them in red tape, supporting our hospitality industry, tourism, agriculture, and fisheries, industries that are part of Jersey's identity and vital to our economy, and protecting our finance industry, which remains essential to funding our public services and maintaining our standard of living. When business succeeds, Jersey succeeds. Prosperity does not come from government paperwork. It comes from hard work, enterprise, and giving people the confidence to invest in Jersey's future. Most importantly, we need leadership with a clear, long-term direction for our island. I am standing because I believe St Helier Central deserves a strong, independent voice, a representative who understands real life, someone who is grounded in the community, someone who will speak honestly, challenge waste, support enterprise, and put islanders first. I hope you will consider voting for me, Robin Ward, a true independent candidate offering not only real choice, but a real voice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Cameron's just going to use the rest of his time, so he's got a minute and a half. Off you.
Me, I am. I don't know about that.
Okay, off
I
you go.
mostly wants to reiterate on a lot of what Robin said. I think at the moment the States of Jersey is a bit more focused on taking ever smaller and smaller pieces of a shrinking pie instead of what it needs to be focused on, which is bringing more money into the island, supporting local businesses, making it easier to start one, helping ones that already exist to grow, bringing more money into a business, which then leaves into the form of employees, into the form of suppliers, and into the government ecosystem and addresses some of the crisis. You cannot tax your way to prosperity. And I think far too often the question that gets raised when we have budget concerns becomes how much more money can we take from people who have none to give, rather than where on earth has all that money gone and why have we so little to show for it? I think that'll finish me up for now.
Thank you to all the candidates. Well, you've heard what they've all got to say. Now it's time for questions. Tom will be bringing a microphone round. If you put your hand up, ask one question and then hand the mic back to the helper. It would be helpful if you could stand up when you ask your question so that we can see you and you can tell us that you are a St Helier Central parishioner. And when phrasing your question, please bear in mind that every candidate needs to be able to answer it, so no questions directed at just one person. If we have time, I will come back to people who want to ask a second question. And please keep your questions succinct. Let's leave the speeches to the candidates. We won't be taking questions from other election candidates or from current States members. Okay, let's get started. Who would like to ask a question? Well, it's going to be a very short evening for no one. It's great. Okay, if you stand up and speak clearly into the mic. And Tom was just bringing it now.
Hello, my name's Sam Pearce. I live in St Helier. St Helier is a very diverse place. It's got lots of different ethnicities, people from all walks of life. One of the things I'm interested in is, for any of the candidates standing tonight, if you are elected to the States, what will be your thoughts on implementing hate crime legislation and other things to protect vulnerable minorities in our community?
Okay, so would you introduce hate crime legislation? First to answer this question, Karina Alves.
Thank you. The short answer is yes, absolutely. I've worked the past couple of years in government to secure the future of the International Cultural Centre, and over that time we've been able to support community and cultural diversity through a grant system. We've also implemented, I think I mentioned it in my opening speech, an advocacy service as well, which is a free service that allows people arriving in Jersey, but also those who have also been here for a number of years, because I've referred many of them, just to know and understand and navigate our government systems, because we understand, and I see it on a almost daily occasion from constituents, how difficult it can be to really understand what support is out there, and to understand people's experiences as well. I am second generation Portuguese myself, so my parents arrived here in the 70s. I am Jersey born, and I have experienced discrimination over the years, and for many years I didn't speak out, and I was afraid to, and to be honest, even since being elected, I've actually experienced it at a much more intense level, actually, at one point in my first term, and I do regret not reporting it to the police. So I am absolutely behind hate crime legislation, and I'd like to actually put out a plea to people that if they do experience any type of discrimination, to please report it. Thank you.
Lee Carpenter.
Thank you. And thank you for your question. It's a very easy one. Yes, 100%. We would support that. Cultural diversity and all kinds of diversity enriches and enhances all of us as a community. So yes, 100%.
Thank you. Next. Catherine Curtis.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Sam. Yes, certainly I support the hate crime law coming in as soon as possible. And I think the minister did want to do this before, but there wasn't the law drafting time available because of so many other laws being brought in. So it's very important to get this in place. The discrimination laws on their own are not sufficient, really. And also I'd like to see the modern slavery law come in as soon as possible. We need to look again at some of our employment laws, and there's the draft whistleblowing law, which I know my colleague Deputy Alves has been working on. So as society becomes more complex with employment matters, we need to look at that as well. But yes, certainly I agree to the hate crime law coming in as soon as possible.
Thank you. Claire Deton.
I feel a bit guilty here because I've actually written a hate crime law before. And I proposed a comprehensive criminal code for Jersey some years ago. It didn't quite happen yet. I wonder whether if I were elected, this might be more easy to bring forward. Jersey's criminal law needs work in lots of different ways. We don't even have a textbook on Jersey's criminal law, let alone anything more comprehensive. And we have the opportunity, because of that massive deficit, to get it all written down in one place, including modern laws that ensure equality, equal treatment for all. So yes, of course, no-brainer.
Lindsay Feltham.
Thank you, Sam, for your question. Firstly, what I would like to say is diversity is one of St Helier's greatest strengths, and I really do value the diversity within our community. It is within our Reform Jersey manifesto that we support the hate crime legislation coming forward, as it is in our manifesto that we also support the modern day slavery legislation coming in for protection. I can talk as well to my record as Minister for Social Security. I brought an increase to the compensation limits for tribunals for discrimination cases. Unfortunately, another state's member brought an amendment which actually lowered the amount of compensation, which I think is an absolute travesty. So it's again something that I'd want to increase. We need to be taking issues around discrimination seriously and letting people that have to bring claims to tribunal around discrimination, that we do take it seriously and it is worth their while, and the compensation will be paid if that is due as well. So it's an absolute yes from me. Our diversity is our strength, and I'll absolutely be supporting the work to be done on that legislation, as well as supporting it with my vote in the Assembly should I be re-elected.
Cameron Monroe.
So with regards to hate crime legislation, absolutely. I think everyone in Jersey should have the right to go about their lives in safety. If there are some legal levers that we can pull to try and help people who are from a marginalised or diverse background who might be facing more adverse challenges than anyone else, or might be facing threats to their physical safety, if there's anything we can do, such as a hate crime law, to make that easier, absolutely. No objection whatsoever.
I do
John Tokolos.
I do support diversity, and I do support what you say as well. The thing that is important is that we need more education about the fact that with at the workplace where you are, like myself. I mean, I've suffered. I haven't suffered, but I've gone through bullying, and also for the fact that I'm gay as well. So I've had a lot of people come out and say to me lots of horrible things to me at work and everything. So that is something that I want to work on. People need to work on the fact that they shouldn't really be saying things like that. I mean, they should, like you said, hate crimes and everything. There should be a law on that and everything. So, yeah, I do support everything.
Thank you, Robin Ward.
Thank you. Well, what a diverse and multicultural society we are today. We've only got to look in our own government. We've got different nationalities in there. So I fully support anything. Hate crime is not a place. There's no place for it in Jersey. No place for it in our society. and we must learn to get on with each other. Have a look around the world and see what's going on around you. We do not want that in our island. Good luck to everybody, and as I say, I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for another question. Anybody else? So we'll go to this gentleman here, and then I think, was there somebody there with their hand up afterwards?
Hello, everybody. Sorry, in here? Yes. My name's Robert Weston. I own a hotel in the Central District, the Sarum Hotel. We have 60 rooms, but we only have 11 parking spaces. We have a garden with an elderly outdoor swimming pool, but space to create about 13 additional parking spaces. So we're minded to apply to convert to create more parking spaces, and I rather suspect that the candidates tonight will have noticed there's a slight shortfall in parking spaces in St Helier, and I would like to know whether each one would support such a conversion or not, and if not, would you explain why you would not support a conversion to parking? Thank you.
So this is conversion to parking at your hotel, not generally?
Yes.
Okay. So first to answer today is Lee Carpenter.
Well, thank you very much for your question, Robert. I've got to be honest, I'm not familiar with your specific circumstances at your hotel. There is definitely an issue with parking more broadly in St Helier Central. Whether or not we can look at the planning process and see if that can be relaxed at all, I think I would need to really look into that were I to be elected. It's not something that I know a great deal amount, to be honest with you, so I'm not best placed to answer that, so apologies.
Catherine Curtis.
Okay. Thank you, Robert, for the question. I think I remember something like this a few years ago, actually. So, yes, planning applications can take a very long time. There is a review going on at the moment into trying to improve the whole planning process. So I'll be pleased when we see the results of that, if there's any progress on it. My thoughts are about planning, that the first thought should always be to try and do what the applicant wants, and then consider what the problems are, but to always aim to do what the person wants to do with their own property. And of course, there's problems with parking in St Helier. Even people on the residential parking permits normally wait about 2 years before they get a place. So I can't really comment on your own individual application, but I do think that everything should be done so that the applicant does get what they plan to do. Thank you.
Claire Deton.
Thank you. I've supported quite a few people with, let's call them planning issues and complaints in Jersey in the last few years. And so I think we need a review of the planning system, and it needs a more careful balancing for competing rights. But when it comes to a business looking to use its own land in a way which supports the economy and supports tourism or supports people's fair use of their own land, then most planning systems would consider that favourably, unless there are substantial objections from elsewhere. But we need a review. The system isn't really working.
Thank you. Lindsay Feltham.
Thank you, Robert, for the question. I also have a long memory and remember a similar question being asked. I know that this is something that you've been thinking about for a long time. Obviously, I don't have the details about what your planning application would include, so it's difficult for me to say whether I'd support that or not. But the things that I would consider is, obviously, we do know that there's a shortage of residence parking in St Helier Central. People do wait. I remember myself waiting 2.5 years for residence parking. So it may well be that I would would look more favourably if it was to be a partnership with the parish to help more residents have parking, because I think that's good. But the other thing that we'd need to consider as well is what the effect on the roads would be and the traffic. From my recollection, I think maybe the garden that you're referring to comes off of St John's Road. So we'd need to consider what the effect of the St John's on the St John's Road residents would be, whether it meets their needs and their requirements, and obviously the road safety aspects as well, depending on the use of that parking, whether it would be used for your hotel residents, whether it would be used for commuters coming into town, or whether it would be used for residents. Like I say, it might be a really good partnership with the parish of St Helier to enable more residents around that area to have parking available to them. But I'd need to see the planning application before commenting further.
Thank you. Cameron.
So much as some of the other candidates have said, I don't necessarily have the planning document in front of me, so it would be very difficult for me to comment on the specifics of your situation. But St Helier in general does have an enormous issue with parking and with traffic flow more broadly. I think part of the problem is that, I mean, I can grab one side of the street and you can grab the other and we can pull, but I don't think we can defy the laws of physics. There is only going to be so much space available in a road infrastructure designed for the horse and carriage. Parking and traffic flow are enormous issues. I do think we may need to look at a new car park, possibly underground, possibly not. And again, in your case, I would need to see the application to have a more in-depth view. But I believe that past a certain point, the only thing we can do is encourage more development to take place outside of St Helier, and particularly in Central, and allow some of that traffic to spread a bit more evenly throughout the island. We cannot make the roads any wider without building all of town again. I think that's me.
Okay, thank you. Now, John.
I appreciate the question as well, but it's something that I can't answer you that now. About for a review about residential parking, I think that they should look into that. And parking around St Helier, especially with the with local businesses, people who want with the deliveries in the mornings, I think it should be extended a little bit more, because I've spoken to a few people about parking, and they find that they can't get all their deliveries out and about to other people at pharmacies. They can't get their deliveries out because they're still stocking up their vans to be able to take them out to their patients. And so it's something that I would look into once I know more about it, and I can give you an answer on that as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Robin.
Well, good evening, Robert. Without knowing the full facts of the case, very difficult, but I have stated that I support business, hospitality, and it's something that I would support, with proviso that I think, there would have to be a survey of your neighbours over noise, etc., and that road access with the roads committee. But in principle, I would fully support it. May I ask how long you've actually been, how long the application's been in? It's not. Right.
Could we have a mic to you, because people online aren't going to hear that.
So just to say again, we put the application in about 7 or 8 years ago. It was rejected because one next door neighbour complained about possible noise, and they would prefer people swimming in a swimming pool than people driving their cars in and out to that garden area. So it's a question of how short the candidates think we are for parking in St Helier, because there's always going to be the problem of preferring the wishes of one resident to the wishes of another resident, and making a decision.
Exactly. Robin's only got 5 seconds left of his minute and a half now.
I live 400 yards from here, and I know what the parking situation is. So, but I'd like to chat to you about that later.
Okay, thank you. Karina.
Thank you. Without wishing to repeat anything else that all the other candidates would have said, and obviously without knowing the details of your application, what I would say is that I'm assuming that the current residents who need parking are currently probably using parking nearby that would be used by St Helier residents. So I would say, generally speaking, I would be supportive of anything that would enable it to be easier for St Helier residents to find parking. Obviously, I understand that noise and traffic are always going to be issues. I would say more generally about planning, having been on the Privileges and Procedures Committee, we often see the State's Complaints Board reports, and a number of them are often about the planning department. And I am always keen to try and simplify any systems and make them as open and transparent as possible. So I hope that when you do put in your next application, it's not as difficult as it has been in the past, hopefully, and that you're able to navigate that system and support the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I seem to remember there was somebody with their hand up in the middle there, was there? Or was I imagining it? Okay, anybody else with a question for the candidates? Lady over there, so there's one, and then the gentleman with the white shirt, and then the one behind. So if you could stand up and speak directly into the mic, thank you.
Hi, my name's Mary. I've lived in St Helier Central for 29 years. I guess my question to each candidate is, if you're elected, would you be seeking a ministerial role? And if so, which one?
Okay, thank you. So first to answer this question is Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, Mary, for that question. I've done my first 4 years in the States Assembly and led scrutiny. I would be happy to take another leadership role. So either leading scrutiny or a ministerial role. I think I could well do a ministerial role. So that could be on the subjects I've already scrutinised, children or education or home affairs. I'm also, because of my business background, be interested in sustainable economic development. But I think the important thing is that we put ourselves forward for what needs doing best and what we're best suited to. So I do enjoy working with the other states members, not just my party colleagues, but all the states members. And we'll see who becomes the next Chief Minister. And I will be happy to offer my services where they're most needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire.
Thank you. I've got quite a diverse CV, quite a diverse range of skills and experience. I'm not rushing towards a ministerial role, but I would happily take one if someone suggests that I should do it. So I do, justice, crime, rights, quite a lot of different types of law. I also do finance and corporate governance. So, and environment. So there's a bit of a choice.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Hello, Mary. Thank you for the question. When it comes down to it, it comes down to whether you feel like you can make an effective change in a ministerial role. So the first thing that I would consider is who the Chief Minister was and whether I could work effectively with them and whether they would indeed be able to support me to make the kind of changes that I would want to make. It has been my privilege to have been the Social Security Minister for the past 2.5 years. I would like to take the work that I've already started to do further. I have made some progress in areas that I wanted to make, but not as much progress as I'd like to. So I think I was the first minister, officer said to me, that actually took a line-by-line review of all of the income support guidelines. I made some changes that I could make in the time that I had, but I'd still like to make those processes easier for people to follow. There's some work to do, I think, around income support in relation to people who have mortgages. Very often they're also feeling the pinch but can't access support. so there's work that I would want to continue as well as employment legislation as well. If I wasn't in that role, I also think that scrutiny roles are incredibly important. Part of our fundamental accountability within the States Assembly is the work that's undertaken by scrutiny. I really enjoyed being the chair of the Public Accounts Committee for 2 years. That gave me a really good insight into the whole of government operations. And I would welcome doing that kind of role as well. Really depends how the cards land.
Thank you. Cameron.
Thank you. First off, thank you for the question. As you can probably tell, I'm fairly new to politics and public speaking in general. So for my first go around, I would probably not be interested in seeking a ministerial position. The ministerial role that would catch my interest doesn't exist at the moment, which is a minister for tech, digital, IT, whatever you ultimately want to call it. I do think the State of Jersey has a serious cost-saving opportunity in its IT network and the related systems. It's a patchwork of incompatible systems, some of which are quite out of date, and I think a little bit of political focus, a little bit of willpower, and a little bit of investment would do a power of good and save a tremendous amount of money. Unfortunately, the ministerial position for that sphere just doesn't exist at this time. Were I to be elected and then were I to run for a second term and that position to have been created, I think my master's degree in cybersecurity would make me a good candidate for it, but I would be more than willing to cede the floor to someone with more experience than me in the area. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. John.
Like you said as well, I'm new to this as well, so for a ministerial position for me, it sounds great. But for me, I would think the best role for me will be in constituency because I'm more of a people's person. I want to hear what the people of Jersey want and listen to their questions, see what I can do to help. This is something that is very important to me. That's something that I will do. Thank you.
Robin.
Well, first thing we've got to do is get elected. So I've not really thought about it, but I've had 47 years of my business dealing with a lot of the time with the infrastructure department, and I think that could be one of my strengths. I'd certainly like to start sorting the roads out and the roadworks, things like that. There just seems to be no communication between people there. I have a passion for the agriculture and fisheries. I have a background with that, marine engineer by trade. I don't know, I think maybe the other one would be health, but I think the infrastructure would be my strongest point. So, thank you.
Thank you. Karina.
Thank you. I think I'll probably start by echoing some of the comments that Lindsay said about it's all dependent on the makeup of the Council of Ministers. I think I've been very fortunate that I've been able to be an assistant minister of over a number of portfolios over the last 2 years. I've called it my apprenticeship years, if you like, where I've been in education, housing, and also the Chief Minister's assistant minister. I quite like having that variety, to be honest. I think when you're a minister, you end up just focusing on the one portfolio. I think by having a number, although at times I have wondered why I signed up for so much, it has been really beneficial because I've been able to provide a bit more of a joined up approach and make the different departments aware of what's going on and where there may be possible overlap. So I'd probably be a bit keener to continue as an assistant minister as opposed to an actual ministerial role. Ultimately, for me, constituents take priority because I wouldn't be here without you and without your vote, and that has sometimes been difficult to balance, to be honest. So I would probably maybe not take on 3 portfolios, but again, it all depends on what the makeup of the Council of Ministers would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Thank you for your question, Mary. Echoing what some of the other candidates have said, as a first-time candidate, I would probably look to go into a scrutiny panel during a first term. I work in finance. I've worked in finance now for 13 years, banking prior to that for a few years as well. So I would be comfortable in public accounts, scrutiny panel perhaps. But I'd also be very interested in environment, housing and infrastructure. My particular focus in finance is green sustainable finance. So I'm particularly interested in the environment. I think with infrastructure, I think we can do a lot in terms of enhancing our active travel and improving our cycle tracks and people's ability to cycle around the island, I think. So, so yeah, those would be my focuses, I think.
Thank you. Now we move on to the next question. I think the chap 3 rows back, he had his hand up with the jacket and the black top, and then the one behind.
Hiya. Sorry, I'm Michael. I did have a number of questions, but I wrote this one down as you guys were speaking earlier. My dad's had a restaurant in St Helier for 36 years. Now, that's an achievement in itself. However, recently I've watched him progressively get less and less customers, struggle to find staff. I know things have been done in the past, and you've all said you want to support local businesses, but what exactly would you do, and how would you go about doing it to support local business, not just him, but all local business?
Thank you. First to answer this one is Claire.
Okay, so there is a pervasive problem with failure to support small businesses in Jersey. I've tried recently as a little experiment setting up a business, the same business, in London and Jersey. You should be able to guess which one costs 5 times as much, takes 5 times as long, and is much more clunky and difficult to do. And that's before you've even got as far as hitting send on the form. From the moment of thinking you want to run a business onwards, there are more obstacles here, and it doesn't need to be that way. We should have a streamlined process from the beginning, from the idea onwards, through an app which sets the thing up for you in 20 minutes, subject to approval. It shouldn't be run by the JFSC. It should be run by an independent body, which is specially designed to then continue to support small businesses. In London, I used to help run a digital catapult, long day. So supporting startups in the digital world. The same technology, the same ideas can work to support any kind of business. We need to scaffold and support businesses from idea onwards and right the way through their lifetime. And we need to do that in accessible ways without a lot of red tape.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Thank you, Michael, and congratulations to your dad for running such a successful business over such a long period of time. One of the changes that I have made is obviously raising the minimum wage. Now, in doing that, one of the things that I did need to be careful about is ensuring that there was support available to businesses. So working closely with organisations such as the Chamber of Commerce and the Jersey Hospitality Association, and obviously listening to economic advice from our economic advisors as well within government. So that's one approach that I take to make sure that when we make changes, we take things into account so that people can actually meet what we're asking them to do. And that's how we ended up with a better business support package. I think it's important when it comes to government procurement that we look to buy local first and support local businesses with the money that we're spending from within government. So that's one thing that's in our manifesto. But also there does need to be look at where we can cut unnecessary red tape, because hospitality was in my mind because of your question. One of the things I thought about was the licensing process, working closely with the parish so that we don't have duplication of processes and lots of form fillings and having to go to a licensing bench in the parish assembly and things like that. So those are the kind of practical changes that I think that we can take to support business. But I would also hope that the more money people feel like they have in their pockets, the more they have to spend with local businesses such as your father's.
Thank you. Cameron.
So there are two parts to the answer that I'd give you. The first there would be reviewing some of the business regulations that Jersey has. A lot of these were written a very long time ago. Jersey's history almost works against it sometimes. And I think taking a look at some of these regulations from a modern perspective on a sector-by-sector basis, as Claire pointed out, some of the costs are so much higher than they need to be for no particularly good reason in the modern day. So I would take a look and bring a panel of experts in to have a look at the legislation we have in place around how businesses are run, how they're started, and what ongoing costs they have, and find out what we can do for you. The other one I would like to bring up is the tourism sector. So I'm not sure where the quote came from. I've heard it 100 times, but never a source. Was many years ago, somebody decided that we don't want the bucket and spade brigade. And sure enough, when lots of tourists stopped coming to the island, the amount of people who can go to a restaurant, who can rent a bike, who can go to the movies, who can participate in the local economy, drops like a stone. I think revitalizing the tourism sector for travelers of any amount of disposable income will mean you get more customers through your door, much as we had before. We need to focus more, I think, on bringing money into Jersey, to its people, to its businesses, and through tax income to its government, instead of just trying to shave off ever smaller slices of what we have. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
John.
I totally agree that we need to revitalise the tourism industry. I left school at the age of 16, so I've been working with my family from the age of 16 in the restaurant business. They've retired now, so they've gone back home to Greece, live in the sun over there. Now, the thing that I feel is that the cost of living here in Jersey, if we bring that down, it will bring more people into the island. And also, it also encourages more people to come and work on the island too. We used to, it's just gone. Everybody seems to sort of like sell out and go away. We need to keep them here. We need to bring them in. It's something that it's very important for the island as well. It brings a lot of the economy for Jersey as well, and it brings a lot of tourism too. So that's something that I would really strongly try and do whatever I can to help with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin.
Well, I ran a small catering business for about 17 years. So I know the sort of work that you put in and the hours. I know it's rewarding, not necessarily financially, but I've always said that Jersey we've not got a lot of bad restaurants, we've got too many good ones. The catering in Jersey is just superb. To answer your question about what we do, I think we could look at possible tax breaks, maybe deferred payments. It would have to be on a means-tested basis. But I've said that I will support business, particularly hospitality business. We need to look at different ways. Cameron said that we need to get money back into people's pockets. It's a fact of life. If you've got a few quid spare, you'll go out, you'll do that little bit of DIY work, you'll go and have a bite to eat, whatever it is, it makes the world go round. And I think that's something we need to concentrate on. Let's get the cost of living down, let's get people their money back in their pocket, and then let's see you flourish. That's what I really want to do. Can I ask, do you have parking issues around where you are? Yeah. Okay. So there's lots of things that we need to be talking to you about. I've said in my manifesto that I want to put a steering group together with the communities, so all parish officials and everything, we can talk to you direct.
Thank you. Karina.
Thank you. So I grew up in the hospitality industry as well. My dad was a manager of a number of hotels and restaurants, and I remember tagging along and seeing a number of cabarets and things like that. It was great fun in the 80s and the 90s. I think what this boils down to is two things. It's about attracting customers and attracting workers. I'm going to start with the latter first, and hope that probably my colleagues will have a bit more time to talk about the cost of living and how you can attract customers. So over the last 2 years, I've been responsible for the control of housing and work law. So I've been working quite closely with the business hub and local businesses and listening to kind of their needs. And one of the things that we did was actually make it a lot easier for businesses to apply for registered permissions. Now, those are the permissions that businesses need in order to employ those who have less than 5 years residency. Now, we're living in a very different world now post-Brexit, where we're having to depend on get things like work permits, which we never had to do before because of the EU. Although we weren't part of the EU, we were fortunate enough to be able to piggyback off the back of the UK and those agreements. So that is a step in the right direction. Another thing that we've done is that we've made sure that the business hub and the immigration are working a lot closer together, so that work permits can be more easily navigated and issued. Although this won't necessarily affect your industry as such, but the licensed role expansions that I mentioned in my speech. Yes, so I hope that my colleagues will pick up on the rest. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Well, thank you for your question. We do need to work with businesses to identify and cut red tape that serves no useful purpose. With regards people spending more in the economy, we do need to put more money in people's pockets. And in order to do that, it's very difficult to grow an economy where your middle class and your working class have no money to spend. Government actually needs to address the drivers of inequality in order to change that. We need to address all of our tax levers. Really, they are regressive to different states. So we need to remove GST from food, as an example, and this will help put more money in people's pockets, which they can then spend in the economy.
Thank you. Catherine.
Thank you, Michael. So there's been a lot of good things said already, but I've run businesses. I've been a company director in the UK and Jersey as well. I do think a lot of the problems that come up are to do with planning regulations and issues here in Jersey. And I think some of those are just totally unnecessary. Some of them have points, some are unnecessary. So I'd like to see that reviewed. There are other issues. So I know that more generally, there's been problems with the government actually paying for work that's been done, commissioned by governments. I asked questions about this in the States because I wasn't happy with that at all. So the payment platform wasn't working properly. But coming back to those planning issues, I know there's reforms to the planning appeals system still outstanding. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. At least the licensing law has been simplified. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to read my own notes here at the moment. But the licensing law is allowing for greater flexibility for licensing conditions now. So that is real progress. I'd like to see the Better Business Support Package apply to sole traders as well, because at the moment it does not. And that could certainly help with skills too. Just quickly, also on finance, the JFSC is revising their handbook and guidelines, and I think that will help finance businesses a great deal.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening. Matt Buse, West Park. So a number of you have mentioned that you would like to have more competition in the retail sector and encourage the likes of Lidl or Aldi to come to open up a store here, and you say there's actually leads or managers you've got encouragement or they're knocking at the door to get in. But do you feel that this is actually a really good solution? Because in the UK, when you go to these stores, they have products that they sell on pallets, crates and warehouses. And I think actually having too much competition, too much pricing is going to create a price war between some of the supermarket chains. I actually don't think it might be the most sensible solution, all things considered. But do you really feel that that's going to be a solution for the long term to make Jersey more affordable?
Thank you. First to answer this question is Lindsay.
Thank you, Matt, for your question. The simple answer is I think it's an easy answer on the doorstep when people ask about the cost of living. Whether it's the solution or not, I have reservations about. The last low-cost supermarket that was supposed to be a low-cost supermarket happens to sometimes be the most expensive on the island. It's not been proven that when other supermarkets come into the island, they are then passing on those low costs that you might see in the UK to customers in Jersey. The other thing is where would be an appropriate space for such a supermarket to go. I can't think of a space in St Helier Central. It would go, and I'm looking at Mr Fowler there actually, because the only big open space I could think of that could house such a spot would be People's Park, and we're not building on that, are we? So then we'd look further afield, out of town. Again, we wouldn't want some of those green spaces built on with warehouses. And one thing that also I think about in relation to these is, you're quite right, it's stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap. People require cars to go to those places. And actually the people who need the cheapest groceries very often don't drive, or drive as little as possible. And when it comes back to whether this is a solution for people in St Helier Central, very often we're the ones that do the walking around. We're the ones that walk to our local shops, because actually we need to get back to find our residents' parking space. So I don't think it's a solution for us at all necessarily.
Cameron.
I have to admit, I appreciate the perspective on that one. I'm not entirely certain on some of the stuff that's been said here. With regards to the concerns about a price war, I believe triggering a downward price spiral that makes living in Jersey affordable for the young and affordable for the people who grew up here and stops the mass exodus of people is rather the point. Also, with regards to transport and stuff, it might be physically difficult to get out there. I don't think anyone would make the argument that residents of St Helier Central have their feet glued to the ground and spontaneously combust should they exit the parish boundaries. I think living in Jersey requires being able to get around, and I don't believe that having an out-of-town superstore would somehow pose any more or less of a transport option than any other engagement outside of the town centre. I'm afraid I'm not quite sure on this one. With regards to the idea of them suddenly no longer being low cost, again, that's their entire business model. I'm not sure how we could end up in a circumstance where a company that entirely prides itself on being the cheapest available option walks into town and then suddenly decides, oh, no, change my mind. I'm not quite sure I understand how that one could happen. I'd be happy to... I'd be more than happy to talk about this one offline if you've got some further points or a further perspective I haven't considered, but I'm afraid we might not be on the same wavelength for this one. I'm having a bit of trouble getting where you're coming from. Anyone else have anything?
Thank you. Are we moving on to John? John.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with him. I think bringing in one of those companies on the island, okay, it's going to be competitive with each other, but I think it will bring other companies to bring their price. There'll be a price war between each other. So other jobs will be a lot cheaper. So it'll bring things. But it will be lovely to have something like that in Jersey. I think it will bring a lot more. It will bring a lot more businesses to Jersey. But people are leaving the island to go and do their shopping, or they're going online. So bringing in something that's big like the supermarket, like the industries that you've mentioned, is a great idea. Okay.
Robin.
Might break the trend here a little bit. I'm supportive of cheaper supermarkets. Who isn't? We all want our food cheaper, but for these companies to come to Jersey, there are a number of logistic problems. And if you understand anything about logistics, vehicles for a start off, I mentioned this on the radio, they like to deliver their goods straight to their depot themselves. Their vehicles are over width for our roads in Jersey. They'd need a permit. The building itself would have to be on a permitted route. They like to build their supermarkets from the ground up. They do not like moving into other premises. They build them to suit themselves. So we have planning laws, road restrictions, you know, there's the ferry charges. How long? I think initially they'd be cheaper than what they are in what other supermarkets in Jersey, but for how long, I'm not so sure. I think we'd need to perhaps have some real serious discussions with them and talk about pricing and maybe get some sort of cap on what they're actually going to charge, because we've seen other supermarkets come in. We've all had all sorts of promises, but then once they're here, up go the prices. So I think we need to be very, very careful with that.
Thank you. Karina.
Thank you. And there was a mention about warehouses as well. Now, I remember when the co-op got rid of their warehouse, and my party fought tooth and nail for that not to happen. So, you know, I think the reality of things is very different once retailers get here. You know, I remember I'm a keen mathematician. I was a maths teacher, and I remember when I was growing up thinking, you know, why are we still paying VAT, for example, in Marks and Spencers and New Look, and you know, other retailers are available, you know, that have those pre-labelled prices. So I'm not sure that the reality of things when it actually gets to on the island. I think we've also got the issue of economy of scale. It sounds great, but you know, I would rather be pursuing getting GST off food, for example, because that's something that we've been trying for a very long time, and that will see people get some extra dispensable income in their pockets to then hopefully spend in our hospitality industry, for example. But I think, you know, the Chamber of Commerce recently also published some comments on this, and I think it's probably worth taking on board what they've said as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Thank you for the question. I'm not against looking into the prospect. It might be worth exploring, but at face value, it doesn't add up to me. We've heard that planning is an obstacle. The Strive Hotel was built in the green zone, so you know, planning can be flexible when it's needed to be. Market saturation, as we've heard, is a risk. Are we risking, you know, Waitrose, for example, deciding that their smaller market exposure is you know, renders their business model you know, they're unable to continue operating here. And as Lindsay said as well, site accessibility as well. I think, particularly for people in St Helier Central, if a lot of people don't necessarily drive, the people who will need cheaper food the most are unlikely, or are more unlikely than others, to be able to actually get to a site outside of town, and so it doesn't actually help the people that's most needed for. As Karina said, I think it makes much more sense to try and get GST off of food. That will put more money in people's pockets. I think we also need to look at the flat rate card as well. I think the issue is with freight, and is the flat rate card working with the FDS? At the moment, we only have one logistics company working in the island, and we need to see whether or not we can get competition in that area.
Catherine.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. And first of all, this is a commercial decision whether one of these big supermarkets wants to come here anyway. It would be difficult. They would have to adapt the model they already use, because they are low margin supermarkets. The costs are much higher here than in a lot of towns in the UK. As already mentioned, the Chamber of Commerce has set out an argument pointing out the downsides of this, and how realistic is it, because these budget supermarkets, they don't just depend on the population where they are based, they depend on the hundreds of thousands who could come into that area as well, which they can't have in Jersey. So I'm not against it, but I'm not sure it's realistic. as Robin mentioned, there's the logistics problems as well. I mean, I'm sure they're used to using their own systems for moving food around, and Jersey would be very different. So they would have to add on the freight costs to everything that they bring in. We wouldn't get the same prices as in the UK, and that is just the reality of being an island. So I mentioned again what my colleagues have said about taking GST off food, looking to try and get the flat rate for freight removed, because it's unrealistic. I've always known volume-based rates for freight. And perhaps a food processing plant for farmers and fishers would help. Okay, thank you.
Claire.
Okay, so there's a lot of concern there, but I'm going to start with the evidence. There's a little on Orkney, which has a population of 22,000 people. It might be slightly more. I'm a year out of date on the stats. I could only find them for a year ago. If you look it up, there are some really inaccessible French value supermarkets around the world too. Carrefour has moved out of Malaysia, but I used to go to one there when I lived in Kuala Lumpur. There, we have preconceptions. We need to challenge those preconceptions. Now, a value supermarket is a step to immediately help some people buy cheaper food when there is a cost of living crisis going on. It's not the only step. It's just a first one before a broader evidence-based solution. But if Lidl is willing to keep that supermarket going next door to a Tesco, an actual Tesco, not a franchise, by the way, in Orkney, then why wouldn't they be willing to keep one going here with 5 times the population and more cash, and actually a lot more accessible than Orkney? Have you tried going there? I've been.
Thank you. So we move on to the next question. Oh, should we go to this lady here and then this gentleman over here?
Hello, I'm Lynn. I just wondered if all the
Could put your mic a bit closer to your mouth, otherwise we won't hear your question.
Oh. I'm Lynn.
Closer.
I just wondered if all the candidates here
That's
tonight actually live in St Helier Central, and if not, why are you standing for St Helier Central?
Okay, thank you. So first to answer this question is Cameron.
So, thank you very much for the question. I was born in Jersey and I grew up in St Helier Central all the way up until I left the island for university. Unfortunately, upon returning from university, my family had moved and I now find myself about this much just outside the parish border. I'm standing in St Helier Central because it's where I grew up. It's my home. It's where I care about. And I don't see anything wrong with that, I'm afraid. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. John.
I grew up in St Helier Central. I went to school in St Helier, and I've worked with my parents from the age of 16 when I left school, and I've loved St Helier ever since, and I want to do something where I can help as well in St Helier. So yeah, I do love St Helier. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, I've lived in this district my whole life and in the same house. I've gone nowhere and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here for you people. And I run my business out of this area as well. I know my neighbours. I know my friends in this area. And I really want to be a voice for St Helier Central. I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid to put your points across, and I really, really think you deserve an independent candidate to speak on your behalf. Thank you.
Karina.
Hello. Yeah, so I lived in St Helier Central. Can you hear me? Is that on? I lived in St Mark's Road, David Place and Halkett Place from a as soon as I left home, actually, for the majority of my adult life. I currently, when I looked to buy somewhere, unfortunately, it was just outside. I think I'm about 100 metres off the border. But I did and worked in a GP surgery where I saw, you know, the majority of people who work in St Helier, who live in St Helier Central, and so I know about the issues on the ground. I walk through it every day because I'm so close to it, or drive through it, and I just feel that I am capable of continuing to represent St Helier Central. Thank you.
Lee.
Thank you for the question. So I moved to Jersey 30 years ago as a child with my mum and my brother. I've lived in St Helier for 29 of those 30 years. I've spent the last 20 years just around the corner at the bottom of Queen's Road, and very recently moved in with my partner and her 2 children into social housing in St Clement about 9 months ago or so. So I've spent my entire time in Jersey in St Helier. And St Helier is my parish.
Catherine.
Thank you, Lynn. So 4 years ago, when I first stood for election, I was living with my children in a house in Stopford Road, and very happy there. But I was renting, and the landlords decided they wanted to sell, so I had to move. I had no choice to move. And if anyone else knows, you know, rents and has children and pets, you know that you don't get an awful lot of choice of finding another house. I was very lucky to find a house next, and I live now next door to my landlady, and she's a lovely person. She's wonderful. So I'm very lucky, but it is not in St Helier Central. It's not far out. But because I started my state's career while living in this district, I've got to know people here. I've been meeting people weekly at the town hall for the last 4 years. So I really don't think it would make sense for me to stand in another district. Thank you.
Claire.
According to the parish hall, I live in Central. According to the electoral register, I live in South. I'm on the boundary. I think I'm 1 street into South, but I work in Central. You'll find me there every day, wandering around, talking to people. And I go where I'm most needed. I think I'm needed in Central, is the short answer.
Lindsay.
Yes, the short answer is I do live in St Helier Central. My family has actually lived in St Helier Central for generations, and my mum actually also represented part of St Helier Central. It was District 3 at the time. District 3 at the time of the old District 3 and 4. I am a townie at heart. I walk around St Helier Central on a daily basis. I can see neighbours that I pass on a regular basis in the room tonight, and I hope that I'm always approachable to people when they see me walking around, as I do as their neighbour as well as their representative.
Thank you. Now I think we have another question from the gentleman at the back there with his hand up.
Hello. My name's Mark. I'm a resident in St Helier Central. Could the candidates explain why they may support the expansion of the Millennium Park or have an unbudgeted super school?
So you want him to tell you which they'd prefer? Okay. So first to answer this question is John.
Well, I'm totally supported for the extension of the park, and I feel there's more greenery there will be much better than having to have any other kind of building put up there at all. I mean, I know they've got buildings there already, but extending the park will be much nicer. It's having something like, so if you were to build a school there, I will feel that it will only just bring more congestion around the area. We have already a lot of traffic during the school hours, during the morning and during the afternoon when they close. So it's also, you know, something that that needs to be looked at, really. I mean, I do like the idea of the extension of the park, and that is one of the things that I would push for.
Robin.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm totally opposed to building a school on there. I've spent many years and hundreds of thousands of miles driving around the island, and I can assure you the traffic around there would be absolutely horrendous. That's the first thing. The people of St Helier Central, which is the most built-up district in the island, deserve a green lung. If we build on that, we're not going backwards with it. Let's get the park extended over the gasworks site, and let's give people a real chance to go and enjoy themselves. Many people living in flats and houses, no gardens. It's the one space they can have. Let them go and enjoy it. I took a walk through there the other day, and I tell you now, it is superb. Let's extend it. Let's keep it for our residents, right? There are other parks around the island, but St Helier Central needs that green lung. Let's keep it for our residents. Thank you.
Karina.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying that the reason that we've actually got that park to begin with actually was because our very own Deputy Jeff Southern brought forward the proposition, which I think was the ring binder moment, if I remember correctly. What I will say is that it is not a super school. Okay, what's being proposed is a two-form entry school, which is the same as Dauvergne and Grouville. We currently have children who are learning in school estate which is crumbling, to be frank. We've got teachers that have had to adapt and work, for example, school cupboards that have been made into like smaller offices and kind of breakout areas. The school that's being proposed is to replace two schools that are no longer fit for purpose. You know, we need to balance the need of our children here. It isn't as simple as, you know, it's either a park, you know, we have a park, okay? Our children's needs also need to be given priority. The other thing I'd like to say as well is I'd just like to remind people that the original plans for that area was actually for housing. That was going to be, I think the first plan was 285 homes in 2015. You know, the idea is that those schools that this school is aiming to replace will then become green areas. So, for example, Springfield School will become a pocket park, and so will Le Bar, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Thank you for the question. I would also support the building of a new school on the site. It's important to recognise that you know, we're not looking to increase capacity. It's to improve the facilities available. The facilities at Springfield School and St Luke's are no longer fit for purpose. They don't reach the recommended outdoor space that children need, and so a new school is required. It makes it it makes sense to build it in this location, in my opinion. Running one school will be cheaper than running multiple schools. The Millennium Park will actually be extended slightly with the plans as they've been laid out, and as Karina said, the existing Springfield School site will be made into a park, as well as Le Bar Centre as well, and green space. So there will be an additional green space in the area. Our children will have decent facilities to go to school, and I think that's the right approach.
Catherine.
Well, it would be easy to just agree to the extension of Millennium Park on the gasworks site. It seems that's the popular thing to say. But as states members, to be responsible, we have to do what is the right thing. And I have to remind people that it was not just this government, but the previous government that supported these plans for a school to go on the gasworks site. So to continue to protect Millennium Park as it is, to create more parks on the Springfield site and on the Bar site, but to build a school on the old gasworks site. Now, anyone who thinks these current school buildings are adequate needs to visit the schools and speak to the head teachers. I am in St. Luke's School almost every week because I read for Every Child, Our Future. To year one students, to go from the classroom for year one to the reading area, we have to walk outside. We can't go through the school, or we can walk through the centre of the hall, and that's even when there's PE lessons on. The school is not adequate. The school itself is wonderful, but the building is completely inadequate. And as for La Passerelle, the children are being taught in porter cabins, and that is not acceptable at all. So I feel very strongly about this. We do need a new school. It would not be bigger than Doverne, which is a lovely school. So for me, I think I'm happy for it to go ahead as long as on condition that we get those extra parks on Springfield and the Bar.
Thank you. Claire.
Okay, it's a situation where the community is quite divided, and we need to carefully weigh up the need for improved schools with our changing demographic and falling number of school-aged children, and also our needs for Central and quite a lot of the rest of town to have more green space. Because the community is divided, we need to acknowledge that, and we need to work together and negotiate a way forward so that everybody can benefit from that space. I know quite a lot about the children's rights impact assessments that were prepared for this under the previous government, put it that way. And it's important to think of all of the children's rights there, not just the right to education, but also their right to play. And that's as far as I'll go today, but this needs a bigger conversation, a grown-up conversation about a difficult issue.
Lindsay.
Thank you for your question, Mark. I am supportive of the school site. As a deputy 4 years ago, one of the first presentations I think we got for St Helier deputies and St Helier representatives was from the education department about all the sites that had been looked at. And unfortunately, this was the best site out of all of those. We currently have children driving from St Helier Central past 3 other schools to get to the school that has space for them. That is adding to traffic. Our schools in St Helier can't currently accommodate the children that we have here living in St Helier. Those children that are living in St Helier should be able to walk to their school, and they should also have the right to have decent school facilities, certainly much better school facilities than they have currently right now. My colleague, Deputy Tom Coles, did bring a proposition to the States when the play.com site was available, and me and my Reform Jersey colleagues supported that as an alternative site for the school because that was the only alternative that came forward. Unfortunately, we lost that in the States. We do now have the Maison Les Arches development, which is a good development, enabled a lot of first-time buyers onto the property ladder. I was pleased actually when I visited that development to see the green space and the balconies and everything that is there. It's not the concrete jungle once you get in there that people think it is.
Cameron.
Right, lot to cover on this one, so I'm going to try and be brief about it. First off, the concerns raised earlier about the traffic are 100% accurate. Anyone who lives in Central will tell you that if you want to get anywhere by car between 2 and maybe 5:30 o'clock, don't bother, walk. We do not have capacity for another school run. Second of all, we're in a birth rate crisis. We're constantly being told on one hand that there aren't enough kids being born, it's a massive catastrophe, and in the same vein, we've got people turning around and demanding we build a 50-year solution, in the process destroy some of our precious, rare, irreplaceable green space for a solution we've just heard admitted adds no new capacity. I don't think it can be justified at this moment.
Thank you. So I think we're moving on to another question now. Did anybody have their hand up? There's one right at the back by the wall. Stand up so we can see you, just about. There we go.
Good evening. My name is Libby. I'm going to talk a little bit about sport and physical activity on the island. I'd love to hear your views. The recent obesity, diet and physical activity report told us probably what we already know here in Jersey, that our obesity rates are rising, our physical activity levels are increasing. So as an adult, if you are male, you're likely to be active. If you're likely to be in the 61% of those males meeting the activity guidelines, and if you're female, only 48% of us are meeting that. When we get to teenage years, there is a dramatic drop-off. Only 16% of year 10 and 12 teenage girls are currently physically active, which is obviously a really concerning number. Our local sport organisations are run almost entirely by volunteers. Our facilities are either non-existent or they're not quite fit for purpose. And our local sport organisations are in a financial crisis. My question is around, if you were elected, what are your priorities for sport and physical activity to help islanders access and then sustain a more active lifestyle?
Thank you. First to answer this question is Robin.
Hello all. The obesity thing is quite interesting. I've lost 10.5 stone in the last year or so. So we're getting there. I'm an ex-rugby player and keen swimmer. So I'm very much behind sport for the island. Too many children these days spend their time indoors, stuck on a computer. When I was a child, we were always outside playing down the beach, whatever. So I think we do need to support sport as much as possible. It's also very valuable to the island. We bring a lot of people in for sports, and once again, we have this talent in Jersey for such a small place. We have so much talent, and sport is just one of them. I would have to look at funding for it, because the one thing that I've had a phenomenal amount of emails from different charities, sporting clubs, etc., about funding, and we do have to look at our finances and see who can get the money. But before we can give the money out, we've got to get it in. So we've got to be realistic about it. We'd like to support everybody, but yeah, let's get sport on the agenda. Not just 5 minutes for PE, but as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Karina.
Thank you. So I think that the long and short of it is we need to invest in sports facilities and grassroots sports. I managed a football team, believe it or not, a few years ago, which I set up, trying to find pitches that were available to rent for the team was an absolute nightmare, especially all weather pitches. I think, ultimately, I think affordability and availability are the two issues. And we know how important sport is, not just for obesity, but I think for community integration as well. I think it enables people to feel part of a community, to actually integrate with a range of people from different walks of life. I remember very fondly Fort Regent and all the facilities that were available there. I think it's been an absolute shame and travesty that it's been able to get to the point that it did. So I think, like I said, the long and short of it is we need to make sure that we invest in our sports facilities, but also make them affordable, because I think that's also an issue. I've seen the prices of some gym memberships, and quite frankly, people are having to choose between, a gym membership and probably paying some of their utility bills. And so I think that's what we need to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Thank you for your question, Libby. Yes, I completely agree with everything you've said. Sport is essential for, obviously, physical fitness, mental health, well-being. It allows you to meet new people. I think that we need to try to improve links between sports clubs and schools, and perhaps make it easier for them to have maybe a day where they go and visit a school and actually allow kids to try out a new sport perhaps. We absolutely need to do more to encourage girls in particular into sports. That's particularly troubling, how few actually continue actually being physically active as they get older and leave school. I think, as Karina touched on, affordability is key for sport as well, and gym memberships. Yes, we have to make sure that Jersey Sport have got the funding that they need and the support that they need in order to encourage more kids to play sport.
Thank you. Catherine.
Thank you, Libby. I'm keen to support sport. I also think there's not enough focus on it in government, and I think we need some changes to the way, to the ministerial responsibility for sport. It could be combined with an assistant minister looking at tourism perhaps as well as sport, because they do interact an awful lot as well with teams coming over to the island and new opportunities from that. So I think the government could also do a lot more to help with facilities that sports people need to use. I actually tried to help the Special Gymnastics Club when they lost their place at Fort Regent. But, they were so ground down from all that they also ended up with volunteer problems, because it's hard to get the volunteers to help as well. So, if there was more support in the first place, perhaps they would have just been able to carry on at that point. I actually led my panel to bring an amendment to the 2023 budget for sports facilities at Le Rocquier, and that's still not happened. It passed by the States Assembly. I followed it up just recently and got the answer back that it is a priority and it is going to happen. But that's from the 2023 budget. So I do think there's a problem in government where there's no focus on it. Just quickly as well, if the new school goes ahead on the gasworks site, it will include a 4G pitch, which I'm sure would be helpful.
Thank you. Claire.
Okay, so my focus when it comes to sport would be on early intervention for health and lifelong activity, because the question was actually phrased as about obesity, not sport itself. Sport is obviously part of any effective strategy for health, but it's also fun in its own right. I'm a kickboxer, not necessarily a very good one, and a rower, slightly better. So, but it's part of my life. However, there are other sources of funding as well of the government when it comes to sport. Obviously, sport is charitable in most contexts, and sponsorship is possible. I think we need an effective joined-up strategy that puts all of those together to work out where government needs to inject money to support sport, health, fitness, fun, leisure activities, all of those things that make life in Jersey so vibrant when we get them right. But if we assume it's only a government problem, we lose opportunities.
Lindsay.
Thank you. I do think that this is something that we need to work in partnership across organisations with. I was very pleased to be able to support the government budget at the end of last year, which included an injection of a lot of money into public health, because it is recognised that the more people can participate in things like physical activity, and that was part of those plans within public health to encourage more physical activity to keep people healthier, to keep people living well. You mentioned in your question specifically around the teenage girls and women and the drop-off of wanting to participate in sport. I think very often it can be a very difficult and challenging part of a young person's life when they're going through those teenage years, and I think encouraging those grassroots things like running clubs specifically targeted at that age group of young women and girls is really useful, and encouraging that grassroots funding to go to organisations that speak directly to people in that age bracket would be incredibly useful. So I think there's several funding streams that we could look at. There's more strategic things that government might do on an island-wide basis, looking at infrastructure, but we also need to look really down at the grassroots and really support those organisations that are getting people out there and motivated to go out there and get active.
Cameron.
So I'm told there's an obesity crisis going on. Yeah, I don't know about it. 2 points on this one. I think the first one is that, and again, somewhat sarcastically, but I think this relates to the cost of living crisis to some extent and the lack of access to good food at a reasonable price point. Unhealthy food is cheap. Again, ask me how I know. Getting something like Aldi or something like Lidl over here that can provide food that is healthier at a price point that other shops cannot match will bring down, I think, obesity rates by allowing people access to produce, vegetables and fruits that they cannot currently afford. Furthermore, I think there's some missed opportunities regarding sport interacting with the tourism sector. We've got stadiums, we've got amazing talent in Jersey, and right now we don't seem to do very much with it. Let's put on a show. Let's host some tournaments. Put a bit more focus on getting competitive sports teams out there in the wider world, generating attention for Jersey, bringing back tourists, bringing back events, and getting sports profile raised across the board and some money back into the island as a whole. Thank you. I do think more should be done in schools to encourage sport. Again, funnily enough, not an expert, can't go into detail on that one off the top of my head, but I do agree that it is something that should be given a bit more focus, especially since it doesn't cost anything to kick a football around. Well, maybe the football, but then we're splitting hairs.
John.
Okay. I do agree that sports, leisure and community facilities are very important for health and also to improve physical and mental health as well. With the sports, in the sports area there, I think it does need funding. I mean, if you do the funding for the sports, you bring more facilities around the island. Also, for the younger generation as well. I mean, for the children at school, also get them out to do some more activities. That's one of the things that is really important for the younger people as well. I mean, I agree. Okay, so I totally agree that, you know, with eating healthy is another thing. I mean, I put on a lot of weight as well. I probably don't look thin, but I have lost quite a bit of weight as well. But I struggled with that. Without sport, it was really difficult for me, and it's helped me a lot. And I feel a lot more healthier than I was, God knows, 2 years ago. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I think we've got time for one more question because it's coming up, just gone 10 to 9. There's a question over at the back there, just next to you, Tom. There you go.
Hi there. My name's Christian. I live just around the corner. So I've heard a lot of conversation tonight about spending, and it's very easy to say we're going to spend all this money on all these wonderful initiatives. And I honestly like the sound of a lot of them, but I do have concerns about how you balance the money coming in versus the money going out. So I'd like to hear everybody's opinions on saving rather than spending. Thank you.
So we're back to Karina answering first.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've recently entered a recruitment freeze, which has meant that a number of roles cannot be recruited to. And one of the areas that's being affected by this is actually health administration. And that is people who do your bookings, for example, who do the timetabling for surgical theatres and things like that. And what's happening instead is that actually we've got potentially consultants that are doing that. Now, that is not a good use of money. So I think that's an area that we need to look at. When we're proposing things like recruitment freezes or restructuring, we need to make sure that we're doing it in the right areas and that it's not therefore creating more work for those that are paid at a higher level. So making sure that we've got the right type of staff in the right areas to ensure that our government is running smoothly, I think it is one of them. The other thing for me is duplication. So I mentioned that I've been assistant minister over a number of different portfolios, and while doing that I was able to actually identify that there was sometimes things going on in some departments that other departments weren't necessarily aware of, and so that meant that there was a hell of a lot of duplication. And you know, an example I can give, I think we had a problem with minibuses at one point, and so I was able to that was in education, and I knew from working very closely with the Social Security Minister that we had a register of where minibuses were kept that Social Security was administrating. So that was a way that we saved money. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Thank you for the question, Christian. We do absolutely need to balance the books. I would like to see an efficiency savings programme across all government departments in the next term. One area in particular that I think we can make savings, the healthcare budget is expected to increase over the next few years, and so we need to get the acute hospital built. The plan, as I understand it at the moment, the health minister decided that there were going to be at least 4 different sites, and we need to see if we can try and reduce that down to 2 or 3, and that would definitely save some money there.
Catherine.
Thank you, Christian. So it's a balance. We need to try and get more revenue in as well, and we can think of all the ways we can encourage business to bring in more revenue to the island. But as my colleagues already said, there has been the employment freeze in place, and not to use consultants so much, and that's demonstrated to have saved some funds. I think we need to look at the arm's length bodies, because there's the reporting between them varies so much. There doesn't seem to be enough oversight of arm's length bodies. So I'd like to see some work done on that. Our tech and digital is about multiple strategies instead of a single government strategy, and I'm sure there's been a huge amount of money wasted there. Unfortunately, a lot of work in government is still done in silos, and there needs to be more cross-ministerial groups, people speaking to each other an awful lot more, and that would actually save money. Also, scrutiny, when scrutiny panels are doing their job properly, they examine legislation. We examine an awful lot of legislation, and we find the points that are not working well. Now, if that didn't happen, it would end up costing, again, a lot more money, of longer drafting times and so on. So scrutiny, when working well, saves money. I think Jersey Property Holdings now having service level agreements is making a difference too. So there's all sorts of measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire.
Well, this is actually what I said at the beginning, is that we need to start with proper decision making that includes the full costs which are anticipated not only for government but for every key stakeholder. So the people who will have to live with the law, apply it and live by it. Businesses, charities, individuals, etc. Essentially, we haven't got the plug in the sink and we're running the tap. So we're not measuring how much we're spending on some things. We're spending money without a clear goal or outcome or time scale on quite a lot of big projects. And that's been going on for decades, probably longer. I didn't look back any further. So if we just do some project management basics, put in measures to put in time scales, regular review of projects will save a lot. Coming back on a couple of things, though. Yes, there has been a hiring freeze of sorts, but trust me, people have found ways around it. I've seen the same job advertised at nearly £20,000 higher within a year, and that is supposedly within the freeze. I've seen adverts in the UK for roles in Jersey where they were not advertised in Jersey, and there was a very large set of consultancies which were advertised closing, I think, the end of April for the Jersey government. So only advertised in London.
Lindsay.
Thank you, Christian, for your question. It is an important one, and I speak today as a minister whose department has made its efficiency savings and is well operated and follows all of those project management structures to know how it's spending its money, why it's spending its money, and where we can save money as well. But I do want to caution against blanket recruitment freezes. I think Karina alluded to it before. Sometimes it can cause more trouble, more cost and more problems for people. I would hate to think that the staffing in my department at Employment, Social Security and Housing was cut any more than it has been. We deal with some of the most vulnerable people on the island, and we need a skilled workforce to do that. When it comes to current overspends, I think it's important to look where those overspends are. A lot of that is in health spending. The need for increased health spending is not going to go away. That's one of the things that keeps me awake at night, thinking around what our solution for ongoing health spending is, because it's so important for the island. But what I know as a previous trade union representative is that we need to resolve recruitment and retention issues. We need to keep talent on island. We need to cut the number of consultants that we have and the number of people who are working on locum and contract work, because that kind of work is expensive. We're much better looking after the staff that we have and retaining them. That will save money.
Cameron.
So I don't think anybody's going to make the argument that the States of Jersey as it exists right now is efficient with the public purse. We are taxed to the eyeballs and then another few percentage points more. And the question has to be asked, where is all this money going and why do we see so little returns for it? Why are we 8 or 10 years down the line and hundreds of millions down the pipes and we still don't have a new hospital? Why have so many major roads been closed for the best part of half a year now with no end in sight, all at the same time? Why does every street have doors I knock on who complain about their bottles or their bins not being collected? Why is it always that the government wants more and more and more from a populace that has no more to give and never has to ask itself the hard questions of why we pay so much and get so little? Why are there controls for almost everything someone might want to do that come back to the government? From where you build, from what you drive, from what you do in your free time, for where you go. And yet the government seems to be given a blank check to itself to run off giggling with wheelbarrows of public money. And when it comes time to show what they've delivered, can only go, sorry, I eated it. I think this is a massive issue.
John.
I appreciate the question. I'm not sure whether how I can answer that. With the I just can't. I'm not really sure I can answer that. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll pass that to Robin now.
Well, I think the simple answer is better housekeeping. We need to cut our spending, the overspends, the unnecessary spending. Let's have a look at what actually needs to be done. Is it just something we want, or is it actually something we need? So we spent £118 million more than we earned last year. So we've got to get it into check. I've proposed the health department is a big spender. I've proposed a system for early intervention. Let's try and get a sort of annual MOT, if you like. for people. If we can catch things earlier on, it will save time, save money, it will save inconvenience for the patients, save bedtime and save costs. It'll take a little bit to set it up, but we've got to start talking long term. The long term we will save a lot of money. Things like a carbon neutral roadmap. We've got a £23 million budget. We need to streamline that, something more suitable for our needs in Jersey, something more suitable to our finances and for what we actually need. There's lots and lots of things that we can be looking at. Looks like that's the end of it. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your questions, and thank you to the candidates for their answers. Thanks also to the tech team and to Tom on the mic and anyone else who's helped to organise tonight's event. If you'd like to get in touch with any of the election candidates, well, they might be hanging around for a bit later now, but other than that, you can find their contact details on the vote.je website, on their leaflets, and in the manifesto booklets, which I think have been delivered everywhere by now. Have they reached this area? The manifesto booklets? Yeah, okay, so there's all the contact details in there. If you applied for a postal vote, your ballot papers need to be with the Judicial Gref by 12 noon on the 7th of June. You can vote early at St Paul's Centre if that suits you, between the 26th of May and the 1st of June. On election day, polling stations are open from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening, and remember to take photo ID with you. So thanks very much to everybody for coming. Good night.